Hello, friends. Today I'd like to talk about a 2017 war drama called The Captain. Watch out for spoilers ahead and take care. The events of this film, based on a true story, began in April 1945, 2 weeks before the surrender of Germany. The protagonist, private deserter Willie Herold, runs down a country road, followed by an entire truckload of merry Germans in the back playing a band, and the captain, sipping schnapps from his throat, shoots at the fleeing outlaw. Herold is fortunate. Reaching the woods, where the truck will not pass, he hides from his pursuers. Later, at an abandoned train station, he finds a blanket. There he also meets an exhausted deserter with a rifle. After resting, they climb into a farmhouse at night. On a tree near it hangs a corpse with a sign looting is punishable by death, a warning that doesn't stop them. In the barn, Willie steals chicken eggs directly from under the chickens while his partner stands with a rock over the sleeping watchman. The chickens make a noise. The guard wakes up. Willie tells his partner to kill the guard, but he runs away. The guard raises a yell and rushes at Herold, who pushes him head first into the bricks. Next, he sees the farmers awakened by the noise of stabbing his accomplice with pitchforks. To avoid being hanged, the former private escapes. He sneaks along the railroad tracks past a small town on a country road. Herold finds an abandoned car, and in it, besides a box of apples, a box with a captain's uniform, and he hastily changes into the uniform. The uniform turned out to be his size, except the pants were too big. Willie performs a little skit, pretending to be an officer, and at that moment, another deserter, Private Freydig, appears on the road. So mistaking the stranger for a real captain, he reports that he has fought off his men and asks to come under Herold's command. For starters, he's willing to pull out a car stuck in the mud. Willie easily accepts the game's rules and starts acting like a commander, especially since he has no choice. When the private pull the car out, they drive into town together. On the way, the newfound captain discreetly throws away his old clothes so that the subordinate will not guess anything. Already in the evening, they arrive at an inn locally not too friendly to the military. The war is almost lost. The soldiers are deserting in droves, robbing the locals in passing. Herold uses the hatred to his advantage. He begins to question the locals about the damage caused by the deserters. For the government to pay compensation resonates with the locals. Even the host feeds them dinner, but Freydig's lack of restraint when eating makes the establishment's owner suspect that they are the same deserters. Only the captain's restraint and skill keep the legend alive. But at night, the locals arrange a check and bring the captured thief under the windows and demand to be dealt with. Without flinching a muscle on his face, Herold puts a bullet in his head. In the morning, they leave for the farm where Willie has been stealing eggs. Here the three fugitives have already taken over. They bully the owners and plunder the food supplies. Herold's commanding look and voice allow him to control the situation. He enlists the robbers in his squad. One of them notices that the captain's pants are too big. Having concluded, he tells no one about it. The squad, loaded with food supplies, sets off further, and on the way, they come across two soldiers rolling a cannon. They, too, join the group due to the lack of alternatives. When the car runs out of fuel, the soldiers must drag it along with the cannon, which at a certain point leads to hate. The convertible catches up with a military police truck. The tough guys check the documents, ready to fire in case of disobedience. Herold has to try hard to convince the checker that his authority is more complete than his, that the Adolf Hitler himself sent him to the rear to check the situation. Taking the crook's lie as truth, the military drives them to a POW camp where they are holding deserters and marauders, and on the way, the same officer who first shot at the fleeing Herold joins them but does not recognize him in his new uniform. It is explained to the captain that keeping prisoners and providing for their subsistence at such a difficult time for the country is an unaffordable luxury. As an essential person, he could help with this problem by bypassing the courts and bureaucratic red tape. In particular, a court-martial is needed to pass sentences on the prisoners. But while Willie will be thinking about this case, his squad needs food and accommodations. The camp manager shows Herold around the detention barracks and familiarizes him with the situation. During the interrogation, Willie's subordinates beat the prisoner while taking more belongings from the others. Private Freydig thinks this is wrong and asks the captain to stop the lawlessness, but he says these people are doomed. At the same time, the director talks to the head of the court officials, Hansen. No one can deal with the prisoners without him. He asks to give one of the prisoners a parcel from his daughter, who agrees, but no sooner has he taken 10 steps away than he takes the contents for himself. Herold tells him that he will hold a court-martial, based on which the prisoners can be executed. Some have already been killed, 2 were shot, and 3 were beaten. This infuriates the justice officer. He reports to his superiors about the arbitrariness of Shortens and Herold, but they say that the prisoners attacked the officer during interrogation. Nevertheless, the situation develops dangerously. The directors may check Herold's credentials and find out that there is imposter. Shortens, who wants to finish things quickly in the camp, calls his superiors to get approval from the Gestapo for Captain Herold to conduct simplified military field trials, bypassing the Ministry of Justice. Willie agrees to take full responsibility. Management, having received the approval of the account, informs Hansen's superiors, and they authorize him to proceed without him. The justice officer gets a call from above and sees that his colleagues are already in full swing to solve the problem. The prisoners are digging a big hole at the edge of the forest. Shortens leads a group of 30 men out of barrack as prisoners. They march, drinking a march even as they are driven into the pit. Herold orders a cannon to be brought up, and the prisoners are shot from it. After the first salvos, there are still survivors. They try to escape, but the soldiers, having reloaded the cannon, open fire. The consciousness of what they have done makes Willie want to scream, but he has to keep his face if the trick is uncovered. They will do the same to him. When the cannon stops firing, the personnel finish off the survivors with submachine guns. Only Freydig does not take part in the execution. After a small dinner of hot potatoes, the firing squad returns to their duties. Freydig stands aside, but only until it turns out that in a pit full of corpses, the groans of a wounded man can be heard, and to finish him off, it is necessary to climb into the grave itself. The captain orders to put the poor man out of his misery, which he reluctantly does. In just one day, Herold and Shortens shot 90 prisoners. Hansen reports this to his superiors, and when he hears swearing outside the window, the remaining prisoners refuse to bury the pit. The officer tells the soldiers to bury the grave themselves. They have to obey. When they fill the bodies with lime, it is seen that some of the executed are still alive, but not for long. The personnel celebrate their successful work in the mess hall by praising Captain Herold, and the guests enjoy a performance by 2 of the inmate artists. Willie wants to know why the talented guys were sent to prison, but they won't admit it. Then he offers to play a game, to imagine that they are all thieves. He, for example, has stolen an officer's uniform. The guests take it as a joke and learn that the artist has stolen a dead comrade. This drives Shortens into a rage, from which the rampaging soldiers are distracted. The fight goes out into the street and becomes massive. However, after letting off steam, the instigators calm down and go to beat the prisoners. The beatings are noticed by the officers and ordered to stop, but Herold's subordinates do not listen to the imposter. To avoid losing face in front of the camp commander, he has to improvise. First, he fires a pistol over the ear of the offending soldier, stunning him for a while. Then he puts the beaten men in a row, ties them with a rope in one chain, takes out a pistol, and tells them to run away. As the prisoners run away, Willie shoots one in the back while the others drag their fallen comrade. Herold hands the gun to one of the artists and tells him to do the same. The artist kills the second prisoner, but his fellow artist shoots himself to disobey the order. The captain waits for the artist to raise his gun for one less fugitive. While Willie reloads the gun, the unfortunate target drags 3 bodies behind him. Director's wife takes his gun and starts shooting. Everyone present joins in the shooting. A dozen bullets plunge into the prisoner's body, and it falls into the dirt. In the morning, Freydig sees that Herold is sewing his pants too long, clearly sewn, not to his height. but he says nothing, as it is very dangerous. Should approach us the tent, and the squad to find the deserters is ready. The captain comes out to them in his tunic and underpants, which does not prevent him from reciting a rousing speech and sending everyone on their mission. None of the locals is there yet. Herold's squad throws a party with drunken dancing and taunting of the prisoners. Shortens, who returns with his men, sees the camp with a pile of bodies lying around. The captain's drunken men emerge from the kitchen, and he is barely on his feet. But then a shell from British artillery falls on the mess hall, leveling the camp to the ground. And Allied aviation gives the Germans a big hello. A staggering Herold picks up his cap and coat from the ground. He gives the command. The survivors line up. It's time to flee this hospitable place. Along with the deserter soldiers, several prisoners survive. The squad travels into town in a car with the inscription on the side of the fast court Herold. They stop outside City Hall, where a white flag with the word welcome hangs. This is how the local government welcomes the Allies about approaching the city. The soldiers immediately execute the mayor. Herold heads to the best house in town here, deserters, throwing a raucous party, but then a woman comes along and ruins everything. One of the subordinates brazenly steals the lady he likes from the captain. Payback follows very soon. No sooner have they secluded themselves in the room as the cheeky co-workers drag him into the bathroom. Willie enters the vacated room and removes his tunic. Soon he trials the soldier, accusing him of looting, betraying his country, and other commonplace crimes. The captain passes the death sentence. In the yard, the private is stripped naked and ordered to flee. He walks a few steps before being shot. Afterwards, Herold and his men throw an even crazier party. After such an event in the morning, they cannot think and are taken by the military police. They are arrested. Willie tries to eat his papers, but the police manage to save some of them, and it says that he is a simple private. Despite his many crimes at trial, Herold is offered parole instead of the death penalty. He proves to be a savvy fellow with the iron grip of resourcefulness and the manners of a true officer. Instead of being hanged, he is sent to the front line, to which he happily agrees. True, he later escapes with a rope and bound sheets. The former captain wanders through a forest littered with skeletons, literally walking on bones, before disappearing into the impenetrable gloom of the forest. The final credits tell of his fate. On May 23, 1945, Willie Herold was arrested, and a year and a half later, on November 14, 1946, he and 6 accomplices were executed by court order for war crimes. He was 21 years old at the time.